If I ran the zoo. It's a pretty good zoo, said young Gerald McGrew, and the fellow who runs it seems proud of it too. But if I ran the zoo, said young Gerald McGrew, I'd make a few changes. That's just what I do. The lions and tigers and that kind of stuff they have here are not quite good enough. You see things like these in just any old zoo. They're awfully old-fashioned. I want something new. So I'd open each cage, I'd unlock every pen, let the animals go, and start over again. And somehow or another, I think I could find some beast of more an unusual kind. A 4-footed lion, not much of a beast, and one in my zoo would have 10 feet at least, 5 legs on each on the left and 5 more on the right. So the people would scare and they'll say, "What a sight! This new zookeeper Gerald's quite keen. That's an old guard darnish lion if I've seen." My new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will make people talk. My new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will make people gnaw at the strangest old creature that they ever did walk. I'll get for my zoo a sort of hen who roosts in another hen's top knot, and then another one who roosts in the top knots of his, and another in his, and another in his, and so forth and upward and onward. Geez whiz! But that's just a start. I'll do better than that. They'll see me next day in my zookeeper hat, coming to the zoo with an elephant cap. They'll be so surprised when I swallow their gum. They'll ask, "What do my strange animals come?" I suppose he gets them from a thing like that. His animals have a very odd faces. I bet he hunts them in the rather odd places. And that's what I'll do, said Gerald McGrew. You want to catch beasts you don't see every day. You go to places quite out of the way. You go to places no others can see. You have to get cold, and you have to get wet, too. Up past the North Pole where the frozen wind squeals. I'll go and hunt my squiggly mobile. I bring back a family of what-do-you-knows, and that's how my new zoo, McGrew Zoo, will grow. I'll hunt in the mountains as a Zombotang, with helpers who wear their eyes at a slant, and capture a fluffy bird called a bustard, who only eats custard with sauce made of mustard, and also a very fine beast called the flustered, who only eats mustard with a sauce made of custard. I'll catch them in caves, and I'll catch them in the brooks. I'll catch them in crannies, and I'll catch them in nooks. I don't read about this in geography books. I'll catch them in crunchies and countries no one can spell, like a country of Matafata Palapel. In a country like that, a hunter is clever. He'll hunt up some beats you never saw before. I'll load up 5 boats with a family of jotes, whose feet are like crows, but wear squirrel skin coats, and sit down like dogs, but have voices like goats, except they can't sing at very high notes. And then I'll go to the wild of Nantucket, and capture a family of lucks in a bucket. Then people will say, "Now I like that boy heaps. His zoo, McGrew Zoo, is growing by leaps. He captures the wild, and then he captures from meek. He captures them slim, and then he captures them sleek. What do you suppose he will capture next week? I'll capture one tiny. I'll capture one cute. I'll capture a deer that no hunter would shoot. A deer that's so nice he'll sleep in your bed if it weren't for the horns that he has on his head." And speaking of horns that are just a bit queer, I'll bring back a very odd family of deer. A father, a mother, 2 sisters, a brother, whose horns are connected from one another. Whose horns are so mixed that they can't tell them apart. Can you tell where they are? I can't tell them where they start. Each deer might be puzzled. He's never yet found if his horns are hers or if they're the other way around. I'll capture them flat and capture them scrawny. I'll capture a scragglefoot McWally-Nolly, a high-steeping animal fast as the wind, from the blistering sands of the Desert of Zin. This beast is a beast that brave can ride. They want to go fast and find some place to hide. A Migoli is fine for my zoo, and so Chiefant, I'll bring one back too. In the far western part of the southern North Dakota lives a very fine animal called the Iota, but I'll capture one too, who is even much finer in the northeastern part of South California. When people see him, they will say, "Now by thunder, this McGrew is certainly wonderful." Most beasts are quite friendly, but still in some lands, some beasts are too dangerous to catch with bare hands. For those that are ugly and vicious and mean, I'll build a bad animal catching machine. It's rather expensive to build such a kit. With a hunter, I can never get a bit. A zoo should have bugs, so I capture a twirl, whose legs are startled like a terrible snarl. And then I'll go out and capture some chugs with a keen shooter, mean shooter, beer, booger, bugs. I'll go to Africa Island and Yurka and bring back a tizzle-top tuzzled Mazaruka, a kind of canary with a kind of tall throat. His neck is long if he swallows an oat. For breakfast on the first day of April, they say he has to go down with a very long thing. And the stomach on the 15th of May. I'll bag a big bug, who is very surprising. A feller who has a propeller for rising. The zooming around, making cross-country hoops from Texas to Boston with only 2 scoops. Now that sort of thing is a bug on the top. And when I just caught him, the next thing you know, I'll go and I'll capture a wild tic-tac-toe. With X's that win and 0 that loses. He'll look mighty Gru in this zoo of McGrews. I'll bring back a gusset, a gherkin, a gasket, and also a grotch from the wilds of Nataka. And 8 Parisian princesses will carry the basket, and what their names are, I don't know, so don't ask it. In a cave in Crutum lives a beast called the Natch that no other hunter has been able to catch. He's hidden for years in his cave with the poor, a pout, and no one else has been able to make him come out. And when I'll catch him out of the wonderful meal that's cooked by my cooks by a cooker mobile, they'll fix up a dish that is just to his taste. 3 chickens crushed up made of library paste, then sprinkled with peanut butter shuts, pickled in spice, then baked at 600 degrees and then ice. It might be mighty hard to cook up such a feast, but that's how the new zoo McGrews Zoo gets beasts. I'll go away to the faraway mountains of Tobix, near the river of Nobix, and I'll bring back an obix, a sort of kind of thing, a bobisk, but only a rhubarb and corn on the cobisk. Then people will flock my zoo in a mobisk. McGrew, they will say, does a wonderful jobisk. He hunts with such vine and hunts with some vigor. His zoo, McGrew Zoo, gets bigger and bigger. Then speaking of birds, there's a Russian Paluski, and Headset, and Redsked, and Ballypaluski. And I see one of them for my Zooey Smizgrewski. Then the whole time will guess, why this boy never sleeps? No keeper before knew what he keeps. There's no telling what the young fellow will do. And then just show him. I'll say, "Ka-true," and bring back. I'll hunt in the jungles of Hipponohunchus, and I'll bring back a flock of wild Bimbonobuncus. The Bimbonobuncus from Hipponohunchus are better than those down in the Hippodonchus, and smarter than those in the No-Nipponunchus. And that's why I'll catch them in Hipponohunchus instead of those in Nungius Dunchkins. And people will say when they see these bims bowing, this new zookeeper is simply astounding. He travels so far you'd think he would drop. What do you suppose this young fellow will stop? Stop? Well, I should, but I won't until I've captured the Phisa Wista Dill, the world's biggest bird in the island of Gorp, who only eats pine trees and spits out bark. And boy, when I'll get him back home to my park, the whole world will say, young Mr. McGrew has made his mark. He's built a zoo better than Noah's whole ark. These wonderful, marvelous beasts that he chooses will have him in the greatest of all the McGrewses. Wow, they all cheer. What a zoo this must be worth. It's a god-darnest zoo on the face of the earth. Yes, that's what I'll do, said Mr. J.L. McGrew. I'll make a few chases if I ran the zoo.